Hi everyone, it's Brian back again with part 4 of Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark. And you might be asking yourself, just how many OMD records does this guy have, or just how many OMD videos will this guy make? And I think the answer to the second one is I will make, after this one, possibly 2. There's an outside chance there might be 3, but probably 2 if you can stand that. I was just thinking about this section in particular because it's the era of OMD that I'm least interested in, and it reminds me of what happens when bands you like or artists you like change direction or put out something you're not happy with or doesn't appeal to you, and that's sort of how I feel now. The last era of real OMD, because it had all the original members, sort of went into different territory, and it didn't really appeal to me as much as the earlier stuff. And with this, because 3 members left to form a band called the Listening Pool, this became even much farther removed from the early OMD. So not a period that I like. It's polished mainstream pop, really dancey aspects of house and techno and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, it was very popular, or very popular, very successful. They had 9 top 10 hits. OMD had 9 top 10 hits in this period, which is pretty astounding. On the other hand, AllMusic, a site I look at sometimes, gave each of these 3 records only 2 out of 5 stars, 40%. So that's not great. I wasn't listening to the band at this time. I was listening to other things. This was early 90s. This particular record came out in 91, the first record, and that's the era of grunge became really popular. We had Nirvana. There were things like Dinosaur Jr., Primus, all sorts of interesting stuff. So I would say the next 3 records could be described as pleasant, perhaps, not really memorable, but it was successful for them. And I didn't know this music at the time. It's something I came back to years later. So the next record is called Sugar Tax, and there were 3 singles from that record. The first one came out in advance of the record, and it's called Sailing on the Seven Seas, and the flip side is Floating on the Seven Seas. There is another version of this 12-inch single which has more mixes, and it had a hype sticker. I'm just going to read what the hype sticker said because it's kind of interesting. It said, "Orgasmic musical delights. Here's 3 up-tempo and 2 sleaze remixes of Sailing on the Seven Seas. Get ready to dance." And that pretty much says everything you need to know about what OMD was doing at this particular time. The upbeat, danceable music, no interest in experimenting with electronics and that kind of thing, or sounds that they used to do, just straight ahead dance pop music. And I didn't hear any of these songs at the time. I heard them much later. Now, Sailing on the Seven Seas is actually not bad for what it is. If you like polished commercial pop, it might appeal to you, but if your memory of OMD is more experimental and electronic, that's not going to really do it for you. The flip side on this one is Floating on the Seven Seas, which is not as good as Sailing on the Seven Seas. At some level, I don't mind Sailing on the Seven Seas. It's actually okay for what it is, but it's not right up there. Interestingly, though, there is a reference to Sister Ray in this song. That's he mentions the name Sister Ray, which is clearly meant to bring up the Velvet Underground, which Andy McCluskey's always been a fan of. They've come up a couple of times in these videos, and we'll hear about Velvet Underground in the future. But yeah, it's sort of interesting, but in no way like the Velvet Underground. It's just a name. It's almost like a name drop, to be honest. So that's the first single, and the album that came out. Oh, before I show the album, here's a promo 12-inch Sailing on the Seven Seas, which has 5 different mixes. These are all from 1991. So I guess you call that an orange label promo. And then on May 6, 1991, 5 years after their last album, OMD released a record called Sugar Tax. Now, I did see this in the store in 1991, but I saw the CD version. This is the only vinyl copy of this record I've ever seen. It's quite hard to find. This is a European pressing. There is a song called Sugar Tax, but it doesn't appear on this record. It appears on a 12-inch single because it wasn't ready at the time. So this is their 8th record. And what can I say about this? It's not my favorite OMD record. I I decided to pick it up. I found it available years later, and I thought, well, maybe this is a long-lost OMD record that I should have been listening to, but didn't at the time, and maybe I thought it would be fantastic, and I'd rediscover this great music that I'd missed, but it's not really like that. I did write down a quote from somebody, and it said, it's a deft exercise in short-range synthesizer pop that, for the most part, flutters along on a criminally simplistic vibe with all but a low-rent beatbox and a well-depressed instant choir button to perk it up. So that kind of says pretty much what it's like. There's a Kraftwerk cover version on here, Neon Lights is on here, but it doesn't really compare with the original. So here we have sleeve. So, you know, if I were into mainstream pop music, I probably would have liked it, but I wasn't, so I didn't like it as much, and that's really all I can say about it. Just a little disappointing. The second single from the record was Pandora's Box, and on this one you will see a version of Sugar Tax, the track that never made the record. So here we have 3 versions of Pandora's Box, different mixes, and the Sugar Tax song. So again, it's okay. The video is not bad. It references an actor. I can't remember her name. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's again okay for what it is. Didn't light a fire under me, and a little disappointing, but the video is not bad. And then there came a third single, "Call My Name." Again, I don't really have much to say about it because I don't love it. It's kind of the same sort of sound as the other two, dancey, upbeat. Yeah, sort of a miss for me, but for some reason I have it. And you know, I think it all comes down to the fact that Andy McCluskey had very different musical direction he wanted to go in, and Paul Humphreys wasn't there to sort of bring the weirdness, so it became a sort of strange record. So that was 1991. In 1993, the ninth record came out, and that was a record called Liberator. And again, this pretty much follows the same sort of trajectory, dance pop. And again, this was very successful for OMD. Again, there's a Velvet Underground reference here. There's a track called Sunday Morning, which is a cover of the Velvet Underground track from their first record. Not an inspired cover by any means. It's okay. It works, but it's just not great. Stand Above Me was a single. It's okay. Again, I mean, there were 3 singles off this, and I don't know. It just kind of another miss for me. Unremarkable, a bit boring, repetitive. Dream of Me is actually okay too, but sort of middling, and it didn't really do much for me. But I could show you, which I didn't do, the inner sleeve. So the only photos are of Andy. Whoever else is involved with this record, I don't know if they're listed here or not. Oh, they're thanks, but anyway, his image is the only image we see on the record, and that was dumped by Amazon. I think maybe they're trying to get rid of them. That's a reissue, and I paid essentially nothing, very little amount. As with this one, the one that came out 3 years later. This is Universal, and again, it was almost impossibly cheap. I don't know how there must have been a loss to them. So again, much of the same thing. There were hits on here. Walking on the Milky Way is the big one. I remember hearing an interview, or listening to an interview with Paul Humphreys, and he said he actually likes this record, even though he wasn't on it. And more polished pop songs. But I will give you a little taste of what AllMusic says about it. It said, Universal is a rote collection of synth pop and dance pop from OMD, demonstrating only a fraction of the sophisticated craft that made its predecessor Liberator enjoyable, but none of the adventurous spirit of their 80s records. And that really sums it up for me, because none of the 80s influences are there. And even there's a track that was co-written by Karl Bartos from Kraftwerk. I can't remember which track it is though, and it doesn't really do anything for me. So 12 tracks that aren't really fantastic in any way. And so that really was the end of OMD, for the moment, because Andy McCluskey decided to fold the band. I think the Listening Pool put out a record sometime in this period, and then nothing happened for a while. What Andy McCluskey went on to do is form a girl group, and this girl group was called Atomic Kitten. You can look them up. He wrote and produced their records, and I don't really know anything about them. And there was nothing heard from the band, and that was 1996. It wasn't until the year 2000. This is the only CD that I will mention. The year 2000, this CD came out, the Peel Sessions, 1979 to 1983, which includes all 4 of the Peel recording sessions, plus a bonus track of Electricity. It's the disc. It's hard to see that, the glare. And then there's a short essay and notes about the tracks, when they were recorded, and then this spread that shows the records from the beginning until this point, including some collections and whatnot. I guess at the time when this came out, I was thinking maybe the band was looking fondly back on the early days and were trying to get back together, but nothing happened for a few years, so it was kind of like a tease that went nowhere. But this sort of reminded me of how great the early OMD was, because you listen to Universal or Liberator or Sugar Tax, and then listen to this, and you realize it's a completely different outfit, and this is far, far better than anything they released in the 90s. The 90s period for me is like a total dead zone for OMD. And yet I have the records because I guess I couldn't resist buying them, hoping that maybe there was something in them that I liked, but they really don't say much to me, and they're really completely optional if you're, in my opinion. But then there are other people, if you go on YouTube, who just love the records because maybe that was their introduction to OMD. The first OMD song they heard might have been Walking on the Milky Way, and they're like, wow, this is fantastic. Might not even know this stuff. Okay, that was part 4. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. I'd be interested in hearing them, and see you later.